Rotiro 16. There is something I need to tell you tonight, and it begins with a single scoop of ice cream. Not the dramatic confession you might expect from a health specialist, but something quieter, something hiding in plain sight inside your freezer, inside the very ritual you use to comfort yourself at the end of an exhausting day. That scoop of store-bought vanilla ice cream, the one you reach for when the hot flashes have subsided and the house is quiet, can elevate your cortisol levels for up to 6 hours. The hot flashes you thought were calming down may return with a vengeance by 2 in the morning, pulling you out of sleep, drenching your sheets, leaving you staring at the ceiling. And the most painful part is that you never suspected the dessert. You suspected stress, aging, hormones doing what hormones do, but you never looked at the bowl in your hands. I want you to stay with me because what I'm about to share will change not just what you eat after dinner, but how you sleep, how clearly you think, and how your body manages the hormonal shifts that define this season of your life. And here's what I need you to understand. This is not about giving up sweetness. Sweetness is comfort, it is pleasure, it is self-care you have earned. What this is about is becoming strategic, learning which desserts send a calming signal to your endocrine system, and which ones send a distress flare that reverberates through your hormones for hours. Let me explain what happens inside your body when you eat a dessert loaded with refined sugar. When that sugar hits your bloodstream, blood glucose rises rapidly and your pancreas floods your system with insulin. Insulin is not inherently villainous. It escorts glucose into your cells for energy. But when the spike is sharp and sudden, the insulin surge becomes a biochemical alarm bell. Your adrenal glands interpret it as a stress signal, releasing cortisol, the hormone your body produces when it believes you are in danger. And here is where it becomes truly problematic for women in menopause. Cortisol directly competes with progesterone for the same receptor sites. During menopause, progesterone is already declining, and when cortisol floods those receptors, the little progesterone you have left gets locked out. The result is a deeper progesterone deficit, anxiety, insomnia, irritability, that terrible feeling of being emotionally unraveled by things that never used to bother you. But the cascade does not stop there. Excess cortisol also stimulates an enzyme called aromatase, which lives in your visceral fat, that stubborn belly fat that appeared seemingly overnight when you entered your late 40s. Aromatase converts your adrenal androgens into estrone, which is a less beneficial form of estrogen, and this process deepens what we call estrogen dominance. So now you have a triangle. Insulin triggers cortisol, cortisol blocks progesterone and amplifies estrone, and estrone dominance drives more cravings for sugar, which starts the entire loop again. I call this the insulin-cortisol-estrogen triangle, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Every dessert you eat either calms this triangle or inflames it. Margaret understood this triangle intimately, though she did not know its name when she first walked into my practice. She was 54 years old, a retired school teacher who had spent 3 decades nurturing other people's children and had precious little energy left to nurture herself. Her nightly ritual for over 20 years had been a generous bowl of vanilla ice cream, not the fancy artisanal kind, just the standard store-bought variety with its long list of ingredients she had never bothered to read. When I met her, she was experiencing 8 to 10 hot flashes every single day. She had not slept through the night in over 2 years, and she had gained 15 pounds around her midsection that no amount of walking or calorie counting seemed to touch. She was exhausted, discouraged, and beginning to accept that this was simply what aging looked like. When I suggested that her beloved ice cream might be one of the primary drivers of her symptoms, she looked at me with an expression I have seen hundreds of times, a mixture of disbelief and quiet grief, as if I were asking her to surrender the last small pleasure in her day. And I want to pause here because I know some of you watching are feeling that same resistance right now, that instinctive protectiveness over the foods that bring you comfort. I understand it, I respect it, and I am not asking you to give up that comfort. I am asking you to redirect it. Store-bought ice cream is one of the 3 most hormonally disruptive desserts a menopausal woman can eat, and the reasons go beyond sugar. Conventional dairy contains measurable levels of estrone sulfate and insulin-like growth factor 1, or IGF-1, Hormones present in the milk of pregnant cows that survive pasteurization. When you consume them, they add to your body's total estrogen load, not the beneficial estradiol your ovaries once produced, but exogenous estrogens your liver must work overtime to eliminate. Combined with 25 to 30 grams of refined sugar per serving, which triggers the insulin-cortisol cascade, ice cream becomes a perfect storm of hormonal disruption. The dairy hormones push estrogen dominance higher, the sugar triggers cortisol that blocks progesterone, and the result is hot flashes, disrupted sleep, and morning brain fog. I asked Margaret to try something for 21 days. Instead of ice cream, I introduced her to frozen Greek yogurt bark with berries. The concept is simple, but the science is elegant. You spread plain, full-fat Greek yogurt onto parchment paper, scatter it with fresh blueberries and strawberries, drizzle raw honey, sprinkle crushed dark chocolate, then freeze it until it snaps into satisfying shards. The texture is cold and crunchy, the sweetness gentle, and breaking off a piece to let it dissolve on your tongue is every bit as comforting as ice cream. But what it does inside your body is radically different. The Greek yogurt provides probiotics that directly support the estrobolome, the colony of gut microbes responsible for metabolizing estrogen. The berries deliver anthocyanins, antioxidants that reduce the inflammatory signals worsening hot flashes. The healthy fats slow glucose absorption, keeping insulin steady and cortisol quiet, and the fermentation process significantly reduces the dairy hormones present in raw milk. By day 10, Margaret's hot flashes had dropped from 8 per day to 3 or 4. By the end of 3 weeks, she slept through the night for the first time in 2 years. She called it the dessert that gave her nights back. And her waist measurement, without any changes to her exercise routine, decreased by 1.5 inches because the reduction in cortisol allowed her body to finally begin releasing that visceral fat the aromatase enzyme had been living in. It was not magic. It was biochemistry responding to a different signal. The second dangerous dessert is the pastry, the croissant, the muffin, the Danish, the cake at the office birthday. Refined white flour behaves in your bloodstream almost identically to pure sugar, with a glycemic index often higher than table sugar itself. The insulin spike is sharp, rapid, and followed by a crash that leaves you foggy, irritable, and reaching for more carbohydrates within 2 hours. For a menopausal woman, each spike and crash cycle activates the cortisol response, deepens the progesterone deficit, intensifies anxiety, disrupts sleep architecture, and amplifies the emotional volatility that so many women describe as feeling like they are losing themselves. Diane was 49 when she came to me, terrified she was developing early-onset dementia. Her brain fog was so dense she would sit in meetings and realize she had not absorbed a single word in 15 minutes. She would lose words mid-sentence, the word hovering just out of reach like a name on the tip of her tongue that never arrives. Her irritability was straining her marriage, and she was waking at 3 in the morning with her heart pounding, gripped by anxiety with no identifiable source. When we mapped her daily eating patterns, the culprit emerged with startling clarity. Every afternoon around 2:30, Diane would walk to the office break room and grab a pastry, a croissant, a blueberry muffin, whatever was available. She thought of it as a harmless pick-me-up, a little reward for getting through the afternoon. But that pastry was triggering an insulin spike so severe that by 3:30, her cortisol was surging, and by 3 in the morning, exactly 12 hours later, that cortisol disruption was shattering her sleep, producing the anxiety attacks that had become her nightly companion. The brain fog was not dementia. It was neuroinflammation driven by repeated insulin-cortisol cycles that were producing inflammatory cytokines crossing the blood-brain barrier and interfering with her neurotransmitters. I asked Diane to do 2 things: bring almond flour cookies sweetened with monk fruit as her afternoon treat, and add a small container of chia seed pudding with coconut milk. Almond flour has a glycemic index of roughly 27 compared to white flour's 75, a slow, gentle glucose release that keeps insulin calm. But beyond glycemics, almonds are one of nature's richest sources of magnesium, arguably the most important mineral for a menopausal woman. Magnesium is essential for producing GABA, the neurotransmitter that calms your nervous system and prepares your brain for deep sleep, and it participates directly in progesterone synthesis. Every almond flour cookie Diane ate was actively supporting the very hormone she was deficient in. Sweetened with monk fruit, zero glycemic impact, no insulin trigger. These cookies became her daily medicine disguised as pleasure. The chia seed pudding was equally strategic. Chia seeds are rich in alpha-linolenic acid, an omega-3 fatty acid your body converts into EPA and DHA, the same anti-inflammatory compounds in fish oil. These omega-3s reduce inflammatory prostaglandins that drive joint pain, headaches, and the systemic inflammation that manifests as puffiness in the face and hands. Made with coconut milk, the pudding delivered medium-chain triglycerides, fats your liver converts directly into energy without an insulin response and which support thyroid function, particularly important during menopause when thyroid activity slows. Within 2 weeks, Diane's brain fog began to lift. Her husband told her, with tears in his eyes, that the old Diane was coming back. The anxiety attacks reduced from nightly occurrences to once a week, then disappeared entirely. The puffiness in her face and hands, a visible marker of inflammation she had accepted as normal, melted away. She did not change her exercise routine. She did not start a medication. She changed her afternoon dessert. Now let me introduce you to the remaining safe desserts, because each one is a small act of hormonal kindness. Dark chocolate mousse made with avocado carries a secret that still surprises women. Dark chocolate, 70% cacao or higher, is not a guilty pleasure. It is a therapeutic food. The cacao contains flavonoids that improve endothelial function, helping blood vessels dilate properly and reducing the vascular instability behind hot flashes. It contains theobromine, a gentle mood elevator without the cortisol spike of caffeine, and a single ounce provides nearly 15% of your daily magnesium. Blended with ripe avocado, you get a mousse that is dense, velvety, and impossibly rich, while the monounsaturated fats slow sugar absorption, keeping your glycemic response flat. Those healthy fats also support absorption of fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K, essential for bone density, immune function, and skin integrity during menopause. Baked cinnamon apples with walnuts make your kitchen smell like comfort itself, warm, sweet, spiced. The kind of aroma that tells your nervous system everything is safe. But beyond the sensory pleasure, this dessert is doing remarkable biochemical work. Cinnamon contains cinnamaldehyde, shown in clinical studies to improve insulin sensitivity, helping your cells respond more efficiently, and lowering the cortisol trigger. The apples provide pectin, a soluble fiber that feeds the estrobolome bacteria responsible for metabolizing estrogen properly. And walnuts deliver alpha-linolenic acid, a plant-based omega-3 that reduces inflammatory cytokines along with actual melatonin. Yes, walnuts are one of the few foods that contain it, supporting the sleep-wake cycle menopause so often disrupts. If you are feeling inspired by these desserts and want the complete recipes with exact measurements, preparation steps, and the glycemic breakdown of every ingredient, I have put together a comprehensive guide that you can find in the description below this video. Now I need to tell you about the third dangerous dessert, and this one will surprise you. It is the one women reach for when trying to be healthy: the artificially sweetened dessert. The sugar-free pudding, the diet gelatin, the no-sugar added ice cream displaying its zero-sugar label like a badge of honor. So many women make this swap believing they are outsmarting the insulin-cortisol triangle by removing sugar. But what the labels do not tell you is that artificial sweeteners like sucralose, aspartame, and saccharin do something far more insidious than spiking blood sugar. They devastate your gut microbiome. Linda was 58 when she decided to get serious about her health. She had been reading about the connection between sugar and menopause symptoms, and with admirable discipline, she eliminated virtually all refined sugar from her diet. She replaced her desserts with sugar-free alternatives, sugar-free pudding cups, diet sodas, artificially sweetened frozen treats. She expected to feel better. Instead, within 6 weeks, her bloating became worse than it had ever been. Her digestion became unpredictable and uncomfortable, and her hot flashes, which she had been managing at a tolerable level, intensified dramatically. She was bewildered. She was doing everything right, or so she thought. What was happening inside Linda's body is something researchers are only now beginning to understand. The artificial sweeteners were destroying the diversity of her gut bacteria, and among the casualties were the bacteria of her estrobolome, the specialized microbes producing beta-glucuronidase, the enzyme that determines how your body handles estrogen. When your estrobolome is healthy, it maintains a delicate balance of estrogen reabsorption and excretion. When artificial sweeteners wipe out these communities, the balance collapses. In Linda's case, increased estrogen recirculation deepened her estrogen dominance, intensified hot flashes, and produced the bloating that had become her daily reality. The sugar-free desserts were more damaging than the sugar they replaced, because while sugar disrupts hormones through the insulin pathway, artificial sweeteners attack the microbiome infrastructure your body relies on to eliminate excess estrogen. When Linda switched to real food desserts, baked cinnamon apples with maple syrup, dark chocolate mousse with avocado, her symptoms reversed within weeks, her gut calmed, her bloating subsided, and her hot flashes returned to a manageable level. The lesson is profound. The absence of sugar is not the same as the presence of nourishment. Your body does not thrive on absence. It thrives on receiving the right signals. And that is what each of these 5 safe desserts represents, a signal. The dark chocolate mousse signals your nervous system with magnesium and flavonoids and theobromine, saying, "Calm down, there is no danger here." The chia seed pudding signals your inflammatory pathways with omega-3 fatty acids, telling them to stand down, to stop producing the cytokines that make your joints ache and your brain feel foggy. The baked cinnamon apples signal your gut bacteria with prebiotic fiber, feeding the very microbes that keep your estrogen metabolism functioning properly. The frozen Greek yogurt bark signals your estrobolome with probiotics, repopulating the bacterial communities that artificial sweeteners destroy. And the almond flour cookies signal your hormonal axis with magnesium and steady-release glucose, supporting GABA production, progesterone synthesis, and the kind of stable, sustained energy that does not end in a crash. You do not have to give up sweetness. That is the message I want to leave etched into your memory. Sweetness is not the enemy. The wrong vehicle for sweetness is. When sweetness arrives through refined sugar and refined flour and artificial chemicals, it comes with a hormonal price tag that your menopausal body simply cannot afford. But when sweetness arrives through dark chocolate and cinnamon and ripe berries and the natural richness of coconut milk and avocado, it comes with a gift, a biochemical gift that actually supports the hormonal balance you are working so hard to maintain. Margaret still has dessert every single night. Diane still looks forward to her afternoon sweet treat at 2:30. Linda still satisfies her sweet tooth after dinner. Nothing about their love of dessert has changed. Everything about how their bodies respond to that dessert has transformed. Margaret sleeps through the night. Diane thinks clearly and feels emotionally steady. Linda's digestion is comfortable and her hot flashes are rare. They did not give up pleasure. They redirected it. They became strategic, and their hormones, freed from the constant assault of the insulin-cortisol-estrogen triangle, finally found a rhythm that allows them to feel like themselves again. Your body is not broken. It is not betraying you. It is responding with exquisite precision to the signals you send it. Every dessert is a signal, one that either calms the triangle or inflames it. And now you have what Margaret, Diane, and Linda did not have when they started. The knowledge to choose differently tonight, not tomorrow, tonight. The dessert you eat a few hours from now can be the first signal in a new conversation between you and your body. If this changed how you think about dessert tonight, I want you to share this video with a woman in your life who deserves to hear it. A sister, a friend, a colleague who has been struggling and does not know why. And if you want to keep uncovering these hidden hormonal triggers together, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications, because every week we explore another piece of the puzzle that can help you feel like yourself again.